People ask how my son is doing. I say he was alive when I left. So, check for today. My lovely wife is back there, Christy. People always ask me, is that your first child? Christy? By the way, a quick aside on that. My parents were going to name me Chris until they very wisely figured out. You name your name Chris, your last name is Bacon. It sounds like Chris Bacon, Crisp Bacon. That's not very smart. So what do? I go marry Christy Bacon, so same problem. So my father, who still lives in the King District, by the way, did tell me also, on the eve of my senior prom at Huron High School, my dad is 6 feet tall. He had perfect eyes, so I was about 50 years old or so. I am not 6 feet tall. I had Coke bottles from age 13 on. He said to me, his only advice ever on courtship, he said, "John, whatever you do, don't marry a short girl with bad eyes because you'll breed my genes out of existence." She's 5'5", she said glasses since 5th grade. Dad, I failed on that one, but at my age, I think he's just thrilled that I got married. So, what are we talking about tonight? Something that is near and dear to my heart. We get a lot of requests for pro bono speeches and so on. This one was a very, very easy one to say yes to immediately for me. I am deeply passionate about what we're doing here in Ann Arbor, around the country as well, but for me especially here in Ann Arbor. We are fighting a fight. Let's be honest about this. When I was in school in the 70s and 80s in the Ann Arbor system, the state provided tremendous support for the public schools. That is no longer the case. All right? The way the funding works now, the various systems, the Headley Amendment, and everything else, it is a constant struggle to maintain a world-class district with not world-class funding. And Ann Arbor is still, by the way, a premier district nationwide, even worldwide. But it's not because of the state, it's in spite of the state. And how important is this? It's not just a matter of our kids taking AP tests, doing well in the ACT and all the rest. It goes far bigger, far deeper, not only for our nation's history, but our world's history. And I'm going to go back all the way to 1787, and I promise I will not go year by year. And by the way, Doctor, the $50,000 gift you just gave, I look very cheap. Thank you for that, by the way. We're all pikers now. Thank you. 1787, a guy named Thomas Jefferson wrote the following words: "Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged." And in 1787, this is a radical, revolutionary concept. We're the first nation on earth in the history of the world who believe that you should and need to educate all your citizens, and the reason for that is they're going to end up running the country through the vote. We're the first modern democracy. That is so big, by the way. Walk on down the State Street, go take a look at Angel Hall, and above the pillars, all the words I just gave you are engraved in big letters in the mantle of Angel Hall. Without those words, the University of Michigan does not exist. Without those words, the Ann Arbor Public School District does not exist. It is a radical, crazy notion that has worked shockingly well. So here we are taking it for granted. We're complacent, in my opinion. We've got to fight to keep what we have. We're going to fight mainly on behalf, in my opinion, for the teachers. Let's be honest, and I've been both these, an administrator as well as a teacher. When an administrator is sick, no one really notices. When your teacher's sick, you know immediately, okay? We have to defend the teachers at all turns. The work they're doing right now with your grants, and my wife and I just took a nice long tour of this room, the work is amazing, and they're doing so much with so little. A small gift like mine compared to a big gift like yours will still go a very long way. And I want to underscore why that is so important. Ken Burns once said, and said it often, and I'm a Pioneer graduate, by the way. Ken Burns said that the national parks were America's best idea. We're also the first nation on earth who believed our most spectacular natural scenery, be it Yosemite or the Grand Canyon, should be protected and open to all Americans. A close second, in my opinion, is in fact the public schools. So with that in mind, with the millions of taxpayer dollars reward for leading their companies into the drain, unfortunately, the same politicians are telling us that real economic villains are the public school teachers who educate our children for an average of $45,000 a year. My mom was one of these, 10 years here in the Ann Arbor Public School District, at several schools, and I know she put in at least $500 to $1,000 every year for students. That is typical of Ann Arbor students, Ann Arbor teachers. So that needs to be defended also. The claim that teachers are underpaid, overworked parasites could be made only by someone who has not ever taught themselves but never met a public school teacher. I've done this at Huron for 1 year, and I tell you, I got to the finish line completely exhausted. Anybody who thinks teaching is easy has not done it. It's kind of like waiting tables. It always looks easy until you've waited tables, all right? Anybody here who's waiting tables is already nodding because you know exactly what I'm talking about. We should all wait tables at least for 1 year to lay off the staff. We're a lot wiser about that. Teach for 1 year and understand just how difficult this job is. And not merely difficult as noblesse oblige, but intellectually challenging. This is often cut short when we talk about public school teachers. It's seen as noblesse oblige, right, a noble duty and all the rest, like Peace Corps, which is also very noble, obviously. What I found teaching at Huron High School, the AP and the regular track U.S. history classes, is I learned more U.S. history that year than I did as a history honor student at the University of Michigan. Because trying to teach 130 11th graders means you've got to be ready for all the questions that they might have. It is intellectually taxing. Leonard Colquitt is one of my heroes in the social studies department, low those many years ago, of course. One of my heroes, and by the way, at that same table, is a man I've always revered as one of my mentors, Al Gallup. Al Gallup, by the way, fought in World War II. Al Gallup was an assistant principal at then Ann Arbor High School, was Huron High School's first assistant principal for 20 years, then the dean of community high school, Gallup Park Hussein, that's in honor of his father. Al Gallup turns 90 this summer, one of my all-time heroes. Al, thank you for coming down today. You had to know, Al, that I was going to embarrass you publicly. Sorry. When I was at Huron High School, we had professors from the University of Michigan's physics and chemistry department, tenure track professors, who stopped their careers at Michigan because they thought teaching us at the high school was more important. Right? That is incredibly impressive. My English teacher had a law degree from the University of Michigan, and everyone else who taught me at that place could have done something else and no doubt made more money for less hassle. And those are the kind of teachers that we have in Ann Arbor repeatedly. They are what make this district great. Make no mistake about that. So, Ann Arbor teachers add to that by spending their own money, as I've said, and we're here to help with that. These grants we're talking about, most of them are quite small. And the creativity and the resourcefulness you see at these stands throughout the room are incredible. And a little bit goes a long way, and from those they end up being pilot programs for the rest of the district. When one idea can be shown to work very effectively at Pattonville for ADHD, at Huron, of course, for technology, which would not have involved me as a history major, but anyway, I hope you support it. The STEAM program and so on, we know what works for a very small price. And that's great data that we have. We can spread that data around throughout the district. I also gained something else by going to Ann Arbor Public Schools, which I did not appreciate until much later in life. We have, I used to call it Huron High School, America under one roof. It has to be one of the most diverse high schools in the nation, and probably only Skyline and Pioneer can compete with it as far as sheer diversity goes. And why does that matter? It matters for this reason. Doing what I do as a sports writer and occasionally business, I've been on 6 continents, I've been to 40 countries, and I meet all kinds of people. So I've been to 47 states. You name it, I've met that kind of person, but I already had at Huron. Any kind of person you can name, chances are I'd already met at Huron. And what I often say is, I've already met you, I went to Huron. That is an immense advantage doing what I do. I did not appreciate that until many years later. We do that, of course. We're also, by the way, say that I can still name every single teacher I had in public schools from kindergarten in 1970 all the way through 1982. Every single teacher, they were that good. I included in there was Miss Scheffler. She was Mrs. Scheffler back then, of course. Go ahead and date yourself with that one. Scheffler Park is named after her husband, I believe. She was my great kindergarten teacher at Pittsfield School. I had Ron Puttick in 5th grade. And here's a question, by the way, I asked in my speeches from Vancouver to Santiago. I've spoken on about 12 countries. I've asked this question. It came out of nowhere to me. And I've asked this question in every speech I've given since on leadership. Who was your favorite teacher? And everybody in the world, everybody in 2 continents, all right, from Vancouver to Santiago, can give you that answer in 5 seconds. In English, Portuguese, or Spanish, I've heard that answer like that. And who is your favorite teacher? Linda Colquitt, I'm calling on you. Who was your all-time favorite teacher?
Miss Nash, 5th grade.
Miss Nash, 5th grade. I want to ask how many years ago that was. It wasn't yesterday, but I should have known that. And you still maintain Miss Nash in your mind and your heart. What was so great about Miss Nash?
Geography.
Geography? And why did you like her so much?
I don't know.
Did she care about you?
Yes.
Did she know your name?
Yes, of course.
Right? Did she stay after school and help you?
Yes.
Absolutely. Was she easy?
No.
I've asked that question over 100 times in 12 countries. It is always the exact same answer. Miss Nash, nationwide. Just kidding. She was that good. Of course, it's not always Miss Nash, but the answer is always the same. Cared about us, cared about what he or she was teaching, right? And it was not easy. Had very high expectations. That is everybody's favorite teacher, automatically. I'm talking to corporations, Edward Jones and Ameriprise. I tell them if you're in a leadership role and you still recall that teacher, here's your challenge. When you're the leader, when you're the boss, be that teacher. Be Miss Nash. We've all had a Miss Nash, or else you would not be here today. Everybody here had at least one Miss Nash. That's how important it is, and that was decades ago, I'm guessing. Okay, Mr. Puttock for me was, I'll embarrass myself, not you. Mr. Puttock for me was 41 years ago. Last summer, we had a surprise party for his 80th birthday, and I was the MC for it. And Mr. Puttock was there, getting a little choked up, thinking about us. We all, 10 guys from our class, came back from around the nation to honor Mr. Puttock on a surprise party. That tells you a great deal about the kind of teachers we have here in Ann Arbor, the support they deserve. Obviously now, Mr. Puttock did in fact introduce me at one point for a speech at the Ann Arbor Golf and Outing, and he did point out that when I was a 5th grader, and you will not believe this, apparently I was quite talkative. I know, I didn't believe it either. And he said, he used to have to tell me, sit down, do this, do that. I'm sure if we had ADHD back then, I would be closely monitored, I'm sure of that. But back then all we had was Mr. Puttock, and so he got up there and said a lot of very nice things also. And then I followed him, and I said, when I asked that question from coast to coast, I can answer that question, Mr. Puttock. I said, however, Mr. Puttock, I do have to point out, I will never forget, it's a 10-year-old kid in his class at King Elementary School, him constantly telling me, because all my papers were about hockey or baseball or football, of course, all about sports. He says, Bacon, you cannot make a living only writing about sports and being a smartass. That is one bet I won with Mr. Puttock. So what else do we have? I learned about the Northwest Ordinance in 1787 from Ed Clum's U.S. history class. Ed Clum is still around at age 88, I believe. He's my AP history teacher at Ann Arbor Huron. I learned about how to write from Bob Ghilardi, Madeline Thompson, Lori Wojtowicz, David Stringer, and Andrew Kerrigan. And from all my teachers, I learned the craft of critical thinking. So it's pretty easy to figure out what Thomas Jefferson would think what the current generation of politicians who are attacking public education. I can piece that one together for myself. So, here's what we need to do. For all of the Miss Nashes out there who are currently teaching in your schools, and there's Mr. Griffith back there, by the way, one of Ann Arbor's fine teacher who grew up in the same neighborhood in Forest Brook. He was an All-American swimmer back in the day, and now, of course, he's a fantastic grade school teacher. All right, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, somebody will be talking about your kids' teachers. Somebody will be up here 40 years from now talking about the next Miss Nash who is teaching now. Miss Nash needs help. We do not support Miss Nash the way we did 40, 50, 60 years ago. And this is your chance to do that now, to keep Ann Arbor one of the finest districts in the world and keep alive the simple dream of Thomas Jefferson to educate all our citizens better than anybody in the world. Thank you. Go Ann Arbor.